Welcome back, everybody. Today we're taking a deep dive into a major development here in Vancouver, the Jericho Lands. We've got a whole stack of articles about it, and wow, this project is a fascinating mix of history, urban planning, and some really passionate debate.
It really highlights just how complicated development can be in a city like Vancouver, especially when we're talking about land with such a deep history and cultural significance.
Okay, so let's break this down. We're looking at a site that's 36 hectares in West Point Grey. It's a really prime piece of real estate that was once a First Nations village,
Oh, yeah.
and now they're planning to build homes for 24,000 new residents.
Wow.
Imagine. That's almost triple the current population.
Yeah, the scale of this project is definitely making headlines. I mean, they're talking towers that are 49 stories high, thousands of new homes, commercial spaces, community centers. It's a total transformation. This part of the city is going to look totally different.
And the big thing here is that the MST Development Corporation is leading the charge. That's a partnership between the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations.
Right.
So this isn't just any development, it's Indigenous-led. It means the original inhabitants of the land have a direct say in shaping its future.
And it's not just happening here. We're seeing Indigenous-led projects all over Vancouver, like that Senat project in Kitsilano.
Oh, yeah?
And the Heatherlands project near Queen Elizabeth Park. It's a real shift in power dynamics, a move towards self-determination. It's a chance for Indigenous communities to really make their voices heard in the city.
So what does this ambitious plan actually look like? I mean, it's not just housing, right?
Yeah.
The goal is to create a really dynamic mixed-use community.
Oh, for sure. Think bustling commercial spaces, community centers. They're planning these green walkways that weave through the whole development. They're even talking about a new SkyTrain station that would connect right to UBC. The vision is to create a hub, a place that blends urban living with nature, all while honoring Indigenous culture.
And from what I've read, they're putting a big emphasis on sustainability, making sure they're honoring the land's heritage.
Exactly. They want to integrate nature, water, and Indigenous culture right into the fabric of the neighborhood.
I see.
And they lay it all out really clearly in their policy document, the one Vancouver City Council approved.
Okay.
They're actually going for LEED Platinum certification, which would make it one of the most sustainable communities, probably in all of North America. Solar panels, rainwater harvesting, buildings designed to minimize their impact on the environment.
It's really impressive. But I'm guessing not everyone is thrilled with this project.
You're right. It's generated some excitement about the benefits, but there are also a lot of people, particularly local residents, who are expressing some serious concerns.
Okay, so what are some of those concerns? I'd imagine the sheer size of this thing is making some people nervous.
Yeah, it's definitely a big point of contention.
Right.
Think about it. We're talking about nearly tripling the population of West Point Grey. So people are worried about traffic getting way worse, local resources being stretched too thin. They're worried about how those 49-story towers will change the character of the neighborhood, blocking views. And some people are even worried about how this will affect wildlife around Jericho Beach.
Those are really valid concerns, especially considering the potential impact on infrastructure and the environment. What about the affordability issue? I mean, everyone knows Vancouver's housing crisis is no joke. Is this going to help with that?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The project does include a pretty big chunk of social housing and below-market rentals, but some people are skeptical, wondering if it'll actually be enough to make a dent in the city's housing needs.
Okay. So we have this amazing vision for the future. First Nations are reclaiming their voice, taking control of how their land is used. But then we also have these very real concerns about the impact of such a huge development. So how are people trying to reconcile those opposing viewpoints?
That's the question that takes us to the heart of how Indigenous communities are working with non-Indigenous residents to find a way through these very complex issues. It's important to keep in mind that it's not as simple as just two sides butting heads. There are a lot of people working really hard to find some common ground, to bring those different perspectives together.
It's good to hear that people are trying to work together. So what are some of the ways they're collaborating and talking about this project?
Well, there are groups like the Jericho Coalition.
Okay.
That's a grassroots group, made up of local residents. They're not necessarily against the whole development, but they are pushing for some changes to the plan.
So they're trying to find a compromise, something that addresses their concerns while letting the project move forward. What kind of modifications are they talking about?
One of the main things is they want to see less density,
Okay.
Lower buildings, fewer people overall. They're also asking for a much more in-depth environmental assessment.
I see.
They want to make sure they look at how this will impact things like the groundwater and local wildlife.
Yeah, that makes sense. Are the developers listening? Are they taking those concerns seriously?
Well, the MST Development Corporation has said publicly that they are committed to sustainable development and working with the community. They've
Right.
had tons of consultations and open houses trying to get feedback. But it's tricky, you know?
Yeah.
They want to stick to their vision, but also make sure they're addressing the concerns of the people who are going to be living right next door to this development.
This kind of gets to that bigger question that we're seeing in cities everywhere, right?
Yeah.
How do you grow and change while still respecting the communities that are already there and protecting the environment?
Definitely. The Jericho Lands project is like a textbook case study. It forces us to think about things like land ownership, historical injustices, and what we even mean when we say progress.
Right. If you're thinking about people who are dealing with similar development projects in their own cities, what are some of the big lessons we can learn from what's happening with the Jericho Lands?
I think one of the most important lessons is seeing what can happen when you have Indigenous-led development.
Okay.
It's a real departure from that old model where everything is top-down, decisions are made, without really consulting the people who have the deepest connection to the land.
So this gives them a chance to be heard, a chance to have a say in the future of their land.
Exactly. And it's not just about who owns the land, it's about being able to express their culture.
Mhm.
The MST Development Corporation is really focused on weaving Indigenous culture and design principles into the heart of this new community.
That's a powerful statement.
It is. It sets a whole new standard for what inclusive and culturally sensitive development can look like.
It's exciting to see that kind of focus on honoring heritage and tradition.
And another big lesson is just how important it is to keep those lines of communication open, to be honest with each other. Like we've seen, big projects like this are always going to come with concerns and different opinions. So finding ways to have real conversations, listening to each other, trying to find that common ground, it's absolutely crucial.
At the end of the day, it's not just about buildings and roads, it's about people and the kind of city we want to share.
100%. The Jericho Lands is a good reminder that urban development has to be about more than just concrete and steel. It's about creating places that are fair, that are sustainable, that reflect all those different voices and histories that make up our cities.
It's such a fascinating and complex story, and it's still playing out. So what happens next? What can we expect to see over the next few months and years?
Well, the project is still in that planning and consultation phase.
Right.
The MST Development Corporation is working their way through that rezoning process and still trying to get input from the community.
So they're taking feedback, trying to figure out how to address those concerns, and refining their plans based on what they hear.
Yep. Once they get the green light on the rezoning, then we'll start seeing more of the detailed design, specific timelines for when construction will start.
So it's going to be a while. I mean,
Yeah.
It sounds like this is going to be a project that rolls out over decades.
Yeah, this is definitely a multi-generational kind of project. It's not about quick results. It's about building something that will last, creating a legacy for future generations.
And I bet people all over the world are going to be watching this project very closely, not just people in Vancouver. Why is this project so important on that global scale?
You know, I think the Jericho Lands is like a snapshot of those bigger conversations that are happening everywhere about urban development, about Indigenous rights, about what our cities will look like in the future.
It reminds us that these issues are complicated. There isn't one simple answer.
Right.
But if we can just have those difficult conversations, try to understand different points of view, then we can work towards building cities that are fairer, more sustainable, and inclusive for everyone.
And hey, if you're listening and you want to learn more about this project or other things that are happening around the world, make sure you check out our YouTube channel, Timely Trends and News.
We've got deep dives into all kinds of interesting topics, and we'd love for you to join our community of curious minds.
Yeah, hit that subscribe button.
It really helps us get the word out and reach more people.
And you'll be the first to know about our latest content, which, by the way, we release every single week.
So back to the Jericho Lands. One thing that really stands out to me is how this project is kind of pushing the limits of what's possible with urban development.
I agree. It's challenging the way things have always been done, forcing us to rethink the relationship between the past, the present, and the future in our cities.
And they're doing it on such a huge scale. The size and scope of this project are incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And that scale comes with both a ton of opportunities and some real challenges. It's a high-stakes project, no doubt about it. This has the potential to change the lives of so many people and really transform this part of Vancouver.
So let's recap. What are the key things we should watch for as this project keeps moving forward? What should our listeners keep an eye on?
The rezoning process is definitely a big one. That's going to decide how dense the development will be, how high those buildings will be allowed to go. It'll be interesting to see how the MST Development Corporation responds to the concerns people have raised and whether they're willing to make changes to their plans based on that feedback.
So keeping a close eye on how they balance their vision with the needs and concerns of the community.
Exactly. Keep an eye out for those more detailed designs as they come out and how they incorporate Indigenous culture and sustainable building practices.
Right.
And of course, the big one, affordability. Will they actually deliver on those promises to build enough social housing and below market rentals?
Those are all critical things that will really determine whether this project is a success.
They are.
It's a story that's definitely worth following closely.
If you want to go even deeper into the nuts and bolts of urban planning, Indigenous land rights, and sustainable development, we've got a whole playlist on our YouTube channel, Timely Trends and News, dedicated to these topics.
We break it all down into easy-to-understand videos, so go check it out and hit that subscribe button while you're there. You won't miss any of our new videos that way.
Yeah, and don't forget to like and share the videos. Help us spread the word.
We appreciate all of you who help us grow our community. You know, it's interesting to think about how this project could change how people see Vancouver. I mean, we're talking about a huge piece of land, and it's being developed in a way that really puts Indigenous voices and values first.
Yeah, it's almost like we're seeing like a real-world example of how a city can grow and evolve, but still respect its past and look towards the future.
And it shows how important Indigenous perspectives are when we're shaping the world, not just in Canada, but everywhere.
Absolutely. This development is a great example of that, putting those perspectives right at the forefront. It's showcasing their culture and design principles in a way that we haven't really seen before.
Yeah.
It could actually become a model for other cities that want to do the same thing, incorporate those Indigenous values and knowledge into their planning.
It's a huge step towards reconciliation, don't you think?
Yeah.
A real testament to the vision and the strength of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people.
One of the articles we read had this really powerful story. A Musqueam elder was talking about how important it is to weave their ancestral stories into this new community.
Oh, wow.
It really shows you how deep that connection to the land is for these communities and how committed they are to passing that on, sharing their heritage with future generations.
It's a beautiful way to think about it. It reminds us that this isn't just about buildings.
Right.
It's about people.
Yeah.
It's about people's lives, their legacies.
It's a reminder that we should be developing in a way that thinks about more than just profit. It should be about creating spaces that really reflect the values, the hopes, the dreams of the people who will live there.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the Jericho Lands,
Yeah.
I have to say I'm feeling a mix of excitement and, maybe cautious optimism. Excited about the potential,
Yeah.
the potential for this development to create something truly special, a vibrant community that honors its history and embraces the future in a way that's sustainable.
Yeah, and cautiously optimistic because, like we talked about, there are some real concerns that we have to address. Whether this project is successful, it all comes down to whether people are willing to communicate, be transparent, and be open to changing and compromising along the way.
So in the end, it's about finding that balance, right?
Yeah.
The balance between moving forward and protecting what we already have.
Yeah.
The balance between the needs of a growing city and making sure we honor our history, our heritage.
The Jericho Lands project really shows us that these are complicated issues. There's no easy answer. But if we have those tough conversations, try to really see things from different perspectives, then we can work towards building cities that are more just, that are sustainable, that are truly inclusive.
And for our listeners, if you want to stay up to date on this project or learn more about other interesting things that are happening in the world, come check out our YouTube channel, Timely Trends and News.
We're always putting out new videos every week. We dive into current events, cultural trends, all that cool stuff.
We really love hearing from you guys, so leave us comments, let us know what you think, and join our community. Don't forget to like and subscribe. That helps us reach more people and keep the conversation going.
It really does.
As we wrap up our look at the Jericho Lands, we want to leave you with this. How can we, each of us, and as communities, help create cities that are both innovative and inclusive, cities that honor the past while looking ahead to the future?
It's a question we should all be thinking about as we try to navigate the future of our cities.
It is. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring and stay curious.